Adolf Dassler was born in a poor family on November 3, 1900, in a small town in Bavaria. His father was an ordinary shoemaker and his mother was a laundress at the local washhouse. Since there were no great prospects, Adolf helped his father from a young age and soon became a shoemaker himself. His family lived in extremely poor conditions. There was barely enough money to make ends meet, so in 1920, the Dassler family decided to start their own business of tailoring shoes. Adolf Dassler managed the company. At the time, he was only 20 years old. Soon he was joined by his brother Rudolf. Their friends called them Addie and Rudy. The Dassler small shoe factory, if you can call it a factory, produced orthopedic shoes for athletes and house slippers, and it was located in a small laundry room where their mother worked. The small business started to grow. The slippers were in high demand, but it was just another small shoe factory. Maybe someone else would be content with such a lifestyle, but Adolf was obsessed with the further development of the company. Having gone through many experiments that often ended in failure, he managed to create a product that at the time was a breakthrough in the shoe business. In 1925, Adolf created the world's first with studded soles, which became the main product of the factory a year later. His partners were ordinary blacksmiths who made the spikes for the soles of their shoes. The demand for the Dassler shoes rose every day, which led to the purchase of their own factory building. In 1928, the Dassler brothers developed and patented a new model of spiked shoes that truly made the factory famous. But how do you make sure that people wear your footwear? Correct, you just gift it to athletes. At the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, American runner Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals wearing the Dassler shoes and set 5 world records. The Dassler's brand name first appeared on Owens' shoes with the symbol of 2 stripes. After this event, many athletes chose Dassler's shoes for their performances at the Olympics. Who would have thought that just screwing spikes to the sole of the shoes would be enough for people all over the world to talk about you? In the late 1930s, the Dassler sales exceeded 400,000 German marks, or $100,000. And in 1938, the second Dassler factory was opened. 1,000 pairs of shoes were manufactured daily in these factories. Sales grew at an extraordinary rate until World War II. But despite the fact that both the Dassler brothers were members of the Nazi Party, their factories were confiscated by the Nazis, and the brothers themselves were sent to the front. At one of the factories, the Nazis even tried to establish the production of handheld anti-tank grenade launchers. However, the factory equipment wasn't adapted for such production, so Adolf was returned from the army a year later to produce training shoes for German soldiers. The brothers began to produce shoes again, but given the situation in Germany in the post-war period, the lack of raw materials and problems with international markets, the brothers made a rather controversial but at the same time the only right decision. They started producing shoes from leftover military uniforms. For example, they made the sole of the shoes from old tires of military equipment. The 47 employees that worked for the Dasslers received their wages in form of firewood, yarn, and so on. However, a different worldview and a vision of the further development of the company led to a quarrel between the two brothers. They couldn't work together anymore, and this prompted them to divide all their assets. Shortly after the death of their father, the brothers broke up. Rudolf took the new factory and Adolf took the old. They agreed to never use the name and symbols of their family business. One named his company Adidas, and Rudolf named his company Rudo. But after a couple of months, Adidas became Adidas, which was a shortened version of Adolf Dassler, and Rudo became Puma. This was the famous brand at the time. This way, the famous brand at the time, Dassler, ceased to exist and the new brands Adidas and Puma came into existence. The brothers kept silent about the reasons of their quarrel until the end of their days, but what is most of all surprising, after the collapse of the family business, the brothers didn't talk to each other until the end of their lives, and Puma and Adidas became the most fierce competitors. Adolf's company quickly gained popularity. High quality and innovation helped Adidas become one of the main sports brands. On August 18, 1949, Adolf added a third stripe to the 2 stripes from the Dassler brand and patented it as a symbol of Adidas. Since 1952, the company began to produce other products under the Adidas brand name. The first attempt to diversify the range were the production of sports bags, and although the shoes remained as the main product of Adidas, Adolf was searching for a partner who would take over the production of clothing. His partner became an owner of a textile factory, Willy Reich. Adi ordered 1,000 tracksuits with 3 stripes along the sleeves from Willie. The partners liked each other so much that soon Reich began to sew clothes only for Adidas. At the World Soccer Championship in 1954 in Bern, Germany won the World Cup for the first time wearing Adidas. This facilitated another innovation from Adidas: removable spikes on boots. Shortly after the victory, sales of Adidas boots grew from 800 to 2,000 pairs a day. And in 1956, Adidas even received official permission to advertise its products at the Olympics in Melbourne. The same year, Adidas signed its first licensing agreement with a Norwegian factory in Jorvik, and shortly after it began production in France. In the late 1950s, Adidas entered the US market, taking advantage of the growing popularity of sports and the absence of serious competitors at the time. By the end of the 1970s, the company already owned 24 factories in 17 countries. It sold about 200,000 pairs of shoes a day, as well as clothes, balls, and bags. In 1974, German soccer players wearing Adidas became world champions for the second time. And at the Olympic Games in 1976, the athletes equipped in Adidas won 75 gold, 86 silver, and 88 bronze medals. By the way, this record hasn't been broken to this day. On September 6, 1978, at the age of 77, Adolf passed away. The management of the company was passed on to his widow, Katharina. The most severe crisis in the company began with the death of its founder. Serious competitors began to emerge. In the 1980s, Nike and Reebok began aggressive advertising campaigns in North America. They accounted for 50% of the sports shoe market in the US, while Adidas accounted for only 3%. Adolf's heirs didn't last in the company for long. Katharina died in 1984, and in 1987, their son Horst Dassler died as well. In 1989, the remaining heirs sold the company for only 440 million German marks to a French entrepreneur, Bernard Tapie, who was the owner of the French football club Olympique Marseille. At the time, Adidas was on the verge of bankruptcy. People began to quickly lose interest in the brand. They preferred Nike and Reebok over Adidas. Unfortunately, its new owner wasn't able to improve the company's situation. In 1993, he sold Adidas and after a few years went bankrupt himself. A group of French investors became the new buyers of the company. The marketing budget was significantly increased and production began to move to Indonesia, China, and Thailand. In 1997, Salomon Sport, a French company which was a leading manufacturer of winter sportswear, was acquired by Adidas. This step allowed Adidas to become the world's second largest manufacturer of sports goods after Nike. It also led to an increase in sales by 1.5 times, especially in the US. The brand became more and more popular. In 2005, Adidas sold Salomon Sport. Using its proceeds, Adidas bought 100% shares of its competitor Reebok for over $3.5 million. It was this takeover that allowed Adidas to increase its shares in the US sports goods market to 20% and get as close as possible to market leader Nike, which controls 35%. 409 million pairs of Adidas shoes were produced in 2018 alone, of which 11% were produced in the largest factories in Vietnam. Shoes account for 58% of sales of the entire company. The average turnover of the company is $24 billion a year, while its net profit is about $2 billion annually. Adidas is the largest sponsor of sports teams. This company was on the verge of bankruptcy many times and was also forgotten by the world. Who would have thought that an ordinary shoemaker from a small town would invent a brand that is adored by millions of people all over the world? What is your favorite brand of sportswear and why? Share your opinion in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting videos.